beloved chosen one. Stop for a moment and breathe. This is not another message you stumbled upon by accident. Heaven has pressed pause on the noise around you because your soul has reached a holy threshold. You have done enough. You have carried enough. You have fought battles no one ever clapped for, survived nights where tears became prayers, and stood upright even when your knees were shaking. And now, God Himself is stepping forward to say, "Let me take over." You were never designed to live in constant strain. The reason you feel exhausted is not because you are weak, it is because you are strong and have been strong for too long without rest. You tried to fix what only God could heal. You tried to control what only heaven could align. And still, you kept going. That persistence was not wasted, it was preparation. But preparation has an expiration date. There comes a moment when effort must turn into obedience. Listen carefully. This is not a rebuke, this is relief. God is not disappointed in you. He is inviting you into something higher, divine partnership instead of human pressure. When heaven says, "You've done enough," it does not mean stop caring. It means stop carrying what was never meant for your hands. Some of the battles you're still wrestling with were already settled in the spiritual realm, but your grip hasn't loosened yet. You were taught to survive, to push, to hustle through pain. But God is now teaching you how to trust. Trust feels dangerous when you've been the only one holding everything together. Trust feels like free fall. Yet faith has always required release. This is the crossroads where many chosen ones hesitate. Not because they don't believe in God, but because they don't believe God will move unless they keep pushing. This is where heaven interrupts that lie. The Spirit is gently but firmly telling you, don't do it, don't force it, don't manipulate the timing, don't chase what God has already marked to meet you. No matter the price, do not step out of alignment just to feel temporary relief. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. As Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That is not poetic language. That is a command wrapped in compassion. Come. Rest is not something you earn after everything is finished. Rest is the position you take so God can finally move unhindered. When you stop striving, heaven starts rearranging. When you release control, angels are dispatched. When you choose obedience over anxiety, battles shift without you lifting a finger. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on the edge of divine takeover. But hear this clearly, surrender is not passive. Surrender is an act of courage. It means trusting God with the outcome even if He does it differently than you imagined. It means allowing silence without panicking. It means waiting without self-sabotage. Many people fail here, not because they lack faith, but because they lack patience when God is working invisibly. Your waiting has weight. Your obedience is being recorded, and what's coming next will make sense of the delay. If this message resonates deep in your spirit, I invite you once intentionally to stand in agreement. Like this message, share it with someone who needs confirmation. Leave a comment declaring your alignment, and subscribe to stay connected to what heaven is releasing next. This is not about algorithms. This is about alignment. At the end of this moment, place a seal on your decision. Type 77 in the comments as a prophetic declaration that you are choosing rest over resistance, trust over turmoil, and God's hand over your own. Heaven has spoken, and now it's time to let go. You are stepping into a sacred exchange. What you release today, God replaces with peace tomorrow. The weight leaving your shoulders is not emptiness, it is space. Space for clarity, space for direction, space for divine movement. What once felt uncertain will soon feel ordered, because heaven never removes without preparing something greater to enter. There will be moments when your mind tries to return to old habits of control. When silence feels uncomfortable and waiting feels unsafe. In those moments, remember this truth: God works deepest when you see nothing changing. Roots grow in darkness before fruit ever appears. What feels like stillness is actually precision unfolding. You are being retrained spiritually to respond instead of react, to listen instead of rush, to rest instead of resist. This season is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about alignment. The moment you stop explaining yourself, heaven starts defending you. The moment you stop chasing answers, God starts revealing strategy. What comes next will not require the old version of you. That version survived. The next version leads. You are not losing momentum, you are gaining authority. And stay yielded, stay attentive, stay humble. Heaven is already moving pieces you cannot see. And soon, you will realize letting God take over was never a risk. It was the breakthrough. You are now being guided into a grounded, practical layer of surrender. One that touches your daily routines, your conversations, and your inner dialogue. Heaven saying, "You've done enough," is not abstract. It must translate into lived decisions, otherwise it remains only comfort, not transformation. This is where the core practice for this section begins: naming the limit. Naming the limit is a daily life discipline designed for moments when your body already knows what your mind keeps ignoring. Most people believe burnout comes from doing too much. In truth, burnout comes from repeatedly crossing a personal boundary your soul has been warning you about for a long time. The warning is subtle. It sounds like irritation, heaviness, quiet resentment, or numbness. These are not flaws. They are signals. Begin with observation, not correction. For one full day, simply notice where your energy drops sharply. Pay attention to moments when you agree outwardly but resist inwardly. It may happen when someone asks for help, when a message arrives, when you think about a responsibility waiting for you. The point is not to judge yourself, but to recognize the pattern. You cannot set a limit you have not first seen. Once you identify the pattern, you move to the naming. Naming the limit means describing, in one clear sentence, the exact point where your involvement stops being healthy. This sentence must be specific and realistic. Not "I will never overgive again," but "I will not answer work messages after dinner," or "I will listen without offering solutions," or "I will stop replaying this conversation after 10 minutes. Precision is kindness to yourself. The reason this practice works is because it removes confusion. Many people exhaust themselves not because they are doing too much, but because the rules are vague. Vague rules invite constant negotiation. Clear limits create rest. When the boundary is named, your nervous system begins to relax because it knows what is expected and what is not. What follows is the most challenging part: holding the limit when discomfort appears. Discomfort is guaranteed. Guilt may surface. Fear may suggest that something will fall apart if you stop. Old survival instincts may tell you that you are being selfish or irresponsible. This is the moment where surrender becomes real. You are choosing to trust God with outcomes instead of micromanaging them yourself. Scripture says in the letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 5, "For each one should carry their own load." This verse is not harsh, it is clarifying. It does not remove compassion, but it restores order. It reminds you that taking responsibility for everything is not love. It is disorder. When you carry what belongs to others, you silently teach them not to carry it themselves. Naming the limit returns responsibility to its rightful place. To practice this daily, choose one limit each morning. Only one. Say it quietly to yourself or write it down. Then, when the moment comes, and it will pause before responding. Even a brief pause interrupts old reflexes. In that pause, remind yourself that the decision has already been made. You are not improvising. You are honoring a commitment. Another layer of this practice involves language. Notice how often you use the phrase, "I have to." Many have to statements are actually fear-based habits. Replace them internally with "I am choosing to" or "I am choosing not to." This reveals where your agency truly is. You are not trapped. You are deciding often without realizing it. Naming the limit brings unconscious decisions into conscious alignment. As you hold these limits, some relationships may shift. This is not punishment, it is exposure. People who benefited from your overextension may resist your boundaries. Their discomfort does not mean you are wrong. It often means an unhealthy dynamic was normalized. You are not responsible for maintaining systems that require your depletion to function. Over time, something subtle changes. Your mind becomes quieter. Decisions take less effort. You feel less urgency to fix, explain, or rescue. This is not detachment. It is clarity. When your energy is no longer leaking everywhere, discernment sharpens, a prayer becomes lighter, listening becomes easier. This is what happens when limits protect the source. Naming the limit is not a one-time act. It is a rhythm. Some limits will change with seasons. Others will remain firm. The goal is not perfection, but faithfulness. Each time you respect the line your spirit has drawn, you are making room for God to work without interference. Letting God take over is not dramatic surrender alone. It is practiced surrender, quiet, consistent, and embodied. And it begins here, with the courage to name where you end, so God can clearly begin. As you continue practicing this, be patient with yourself. Limits feel unfamiliar before they feel safe. Some days you will hold them well. Other days you will notice where you slipped. This is not failure. It is awareness growing. Each moment of noticing strengthens discernment and trains your spirit to respond with wisdom rather than habit. In time, you will realize that peace is not something you chase. It is something that appears when order is restored. Your life does not become smaller by honoring limits. It becomes clearer. And in that clarity, God's guidance feels less distant, more natural, and quietly constant. There is a quiet danger that follows surrender if it is not understood correctly. After you name the limit and begin to release what is not yours, a subtle temptation appears, the temptation to take it back. Not openly, not dramatically, but slowly, through thought patterns, emotional reactions, and imagined outcomes. This section is about recognizing that moment and choosing a deeper kind of trust. When you stop carrying what God asked you to release, your hands feel empty at first. That emptiness can feel like vulnerability. Your mind may rush to fill it with planning, rehearsing conversations, or anticipating problems that have not yet arrived. This is not because you lack faith. It is because control once made you feel safe. Letting go removes a familiar structure, even if that structure was draining you. Here is the truth you must absorb slowly. Not everything that feels urgent is important, and not everything that feels important is yours to manage. You are learning a new internal posture, one where you allow uncertainty to exist without rushing to resolve it. This does not mean ignoring responsibility. It means distinguishing between what requires action and what requires trust. The old version of you treated everything as action required. The emerging version of you is learning discernment. Discernment is not instinct alone. It is trained by restraint. Notice how often your thoughts jump ahead of the present moment. You imagine reactions, outcomes, consequences. You prepare defenses for conversations that have not happened. This mental rehearsal is a form of labor. It consumes energy without producing fruit. It feels productive, but it is not. It is the mind trying to reclaim control. The practice here is simple, but not easy when your mind runs ahead. Gently bring it back. Back to what is actually happening. Back to what is actually required of you now. Ask yourself one grounding question. What is mine to do in this moment? Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Very often, the honest answer is nothing. That answer will initially feel irresponsible, but it is not. It is restraint, and restraint is strength that has learned timing. The ancient words recorded in the letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, still echo today. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Notice what the verse does not say. It does not say God works only when you understand. It does not say God works only when you intervene correctly. It says in all things, even in pauses, even in delays, even in unresolved spaces, God's work is not interrupted by your stillness. This is where trust becomes embodied, not theoretical. You may notice that as you practice this, some internal noise gets louder before it gets quieter. Old fears surface. Old doubts ask familiar questions. This does not mean you are regressing. It means you are no longer numbing those voices with overactivity. You are hearing them and choosing not to obey them. There is a difference between listening and complying. You are allowed to hear fear without letting it lead. You are allowed to feel concern without letting it decide. This is maturity. This is spiritual authority growing quietly. Now, there is a moment in this section where alignment is sealed not through effort, but through declaration. A declaration does not inform God. It trains your focus. It tells your mind and nervous system what posture you are choosing to stand in. When you are ready, I invite you to leave a short comment, no more than 4 words. The phrase is, I release control. This is not repetition for repetition's sake. It is a conscious act of naming what you are practicing. Writing it externalizes the decision. It marks the moment you stopped rehearsing outcomes and started trusting process. It is not magic. It is alignment. After this declaration, resist the urge to monitor results. Trust is weakened when it is constantly audited. Let things unfold without commentary. Let God move without supervision. This is harder than it sounds, especially for those who have learned to survive by staying alert. But you are not in survival anymore. You are in transition. Pay attention to how your body responds when you stop interfering. Shoulders drop. Breathing deepens. Thoughts slow. These are not emotional tricks. They are physiological confirmations that you are no longer living against yourself. As days pass, you may realize something surprising: problems resolve themselves without your involvement. Conversations soften without your explanation. Timing aligns without your pushing. This does not happen because you did everything right. It happens because you finally stepped out of the way. This section is not about passivity. It is about placement, standing where you belong, not where fear positions you. You are learning that God does not need your anxiety to accomplish His will. He needs your availability, your obedience, and your trust. And trust, in its most mature form, looks like calm in the presence of unfinished stories. Remain here. Let this posture settle. What is unfolding does not require your force, only your faith. There comes a moment after surrender when life feels strangely quiet. Not empty, just quieter. The chaos that once demanded your constant attention no longer shouts the same way. This silence can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling, especially if you have lived a long time in reaction mode. But this quiet is not absence. It is alignment. It is the sound of God stepping into the space you finally cleared. Think of your life like a river that has been rushing for years, overflowing its banks, eroding its own edges. You tried to guide it with your hands, building walls of effort, stacking stones of strategy, standing ankle-deep in exhaustion. Now God is redirecting the flow not by force, but by design. The river has not stopped. It is simply returning to its course. This section is about recognizing the signs that heaven is actively rearranging things on your behalf. One sign is delay that no longer feels heavy. Things take time, but the waiting no longer tightens your chest. Another sign is distance, people drifting, conversations fading, opportunities dissolving without drama. This is pruning, not loss. A tree does not mourn the branch that was preventing fruit from growing. It releases it. God often works through subtraction before multiplication. Imagine a master weaver working on a tapestry from the underside, from your angle. The threads look tangled, colors crossing where they shouldn't, patterns interrupted, but from above, a picture is forming. When God takes over, He does not always explain the pattern, He reveals it through timing. You may notice that problems which once dominated your thoughts no longer hold the same weight. It is not because they disappeared, but because you moved position. You stepped out of the center and allowed God to take the lead. When you are no longer standing in the way, things shift naturally. This is why metaphor matters. God speaks in images because truth lands deeper when it can be felt. You are like a traveler who finally stopped carrying every piece of luggage at once. You set the bags down, one by one, realizing some of them were never yours. Now your steps are lighter. You move slower, but farther. You are not rushing because you are no longer afraid of missing what is meant for you. Another image, a watchmaker repairing a delicate mechanism. If the owner keeps grabbing the gears, the repair never finishes. Precision requires stillness. God's work in this season is precise. It does not need your interruption, it needs your patience. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 18, verse 6, like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand. Clay does not shape itself. It yields. It stays on the wheel. It allows pressure without resisting the process. And when the potter pauses, the clay does not panic. It trusts the hands that formed it. As heaven rearranges your life, you may feel moments of uncertainty. That is natural. Even clay feels pressure before it becomes useful. But remember, pressure in the hands of God is not punishment. It is purpose. Now, in this unfolding, you are not meant to walk alone. There is value in staying connected to reminders, to shared wisdom, to voices that help you recognize what God is doing when it feels subtle. If this message has helped you see your season more clearly, like it as a simple acknowledgement. If you know someone standing at the edge of surrender, share this with them gently. And if you want to remain connected to messages that help you discern God's movement in everyday life, subscribe not out of obligation but alignment. These are not demands, they are doorways. As this section closes, picture yourself standing back, hands unclenched, watching pieces fall into place without your force. Doors closing softly instead of slamming, new paths appearing where you stopped pushing. This is not coincidence. This is orchestration. God taking over does not look dramatic at first. It looks like peace returning to ordinary moments. It looks like clarity replacing urgency. It looks like trust becoming your default posture. Stay here. Let the imagery settle. Let the truth root deeply. You are not losing control, you are gaining order. And the one arranging your life sees the whole picture, not just the thread in your hand. What you are sensing now is not the end of effort, but the beginning of cooperation. You are no longer pushing against life. You are moving with it. This cooperation creates a rhythm where obedience feels lighter and decisions feel less forced. That rhythm is evidence that heaven is actively involved. As days pass, you may notice gratitude rising without effort. Small moments carry more meaning. Ordinary routines feel steadier. This is how restoration often arrives, not with noise, but with consistency. Peace becomes less fragile because it is no longer dependent on outcomes. Remain attentive, not anxious. The quiet season teaches you how to listen without rushing to respond. In that listening, guidance becomes clearer. You are being prepared, not rushed. And when the next step comes, it will feel natural because you were never meant to walk it alone. The story begins at the edge of impossibility. The people of Israel stood before the Red Sea with no escape route in sight. Behind them, the sound of approaching chariots. Beside them, fear spreading like fire. In front of them, water deep, unmoving, unnegotiable. From a human perspective, this was the end. No strategy left. No strength remaining. No way forward. And that is precisely where God chose to step in. This story is not preserved in Scripture to impress you. It is preserved to instruct you. Because many of you listening right now are standing in a modern version of that same place. Not a sea of water, but a wall of circumstance. A closed door. A situation where logic has reached its limit. You have prayed, tried, adjusted, endured. And now you are here staring at something you cannot move. This is where the story becomes personal. The miracle of the Red Sea was not just that the water parted. It was when it parted. It did not open while the people still had options. It did not open when they felt confident. It opened when there was no other way left. God waited until human solutions were exhausted so His power would be unmistakable. This matters for your daily life more than you realize. You often interpret blocked paths as rejection. God often uses them as positioning. When progress stops, you assume something went wrong. Heaven may be saying, "Stay, watch." The delay is not denial, it is staging. God is setting the conditions so that when the way opens, you will know it was not your cleverness that made it happen. In everyday life, Red Sea moments look quieter but feel just as intense. It's the conversation that cannot be avoided anymore. The financial pressure that doesn't resolve despite effort. The relationship dynamic that no longer works, yet hasn't ended. The calling you feel but cannot access. These moments strip you of illusion. They bring you face to face with your limits. And limits are holy ground when God is involved. You may be tempted to rush, to force movement, to turn back just to escape the discomfort of standing still. But remember, turning back leads to captivity. Standing still in obedience leads to deliverance. The people at the sea were instructed not to fight, not to panic, not to run, but to trust. The voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stillness here does not mean inaction. It means restraint. It means refusing to make fear-based decisions just to feel movement. It means holding your position even when uncertainty presses against you. This kind of stillness requires more faith than constant action. Notice something else about the story. The sea did not part all at once. The path appeared as obedience met movement. The people had to step forward between walls of water, trusting that what held yesterday would hold tomorrow. God did not remove risk. He redefined it. In your life, the path forward may not appear as a wide-open guarantee. It may appear as one step that feels unreasonable, one decision that doesn't come with full clarity, one act of obedience that feels exposed. But the safety is not in the water standing still. The safety is in walking where God opened. You are not late because the way hasn't appeared yet. You are early. You arrived before God finished revealing it. This section asks you to reframe what no way means. When you see no way, heaven sees no interference. When options disappear, dependence becomes pure. This is when divine intervention stops competing with human effort and begins to move freely. There is also something deeply personal here. God did not part the sea instead of the people. He parted it for them. They still had to walk through. Trust does not remove responsibility, it reassigns it. Your role is not to create the miracle. Your role is to move when the miracle makes movement possible. If this resonates, mark the moment not for performance but for memory. Leave a comment with the number 4. This number represents divine order emerging where chaos once stood. It is a quiet acknowledgement that you are choosing to stand still until God moves, and to move when He opens the way. You are closer than you think. The water has not moved yet, but heaven already has. And when God steps in, even what looks like an ending becomes a passage. The number 4 points to order replacing confusion. It reflects stability being rebuilt layer by layer, not rushed, not forced. When you choose stillness instead of panic, you align with divine structure. What felt chaotic begins to organize itself because heaven always restores order before revealing direction. Seeing 444 also represents protection during transition. You may be walking between what was and what will be, much like a passage through parted waters. This number reminds you that the ground beneath your feet is held steady. Even while change surrounds you, there is a quiet phase that often comes just before breakthrough, and it is rarely talked about because it does not look impressive from the outside. This phase is not about action, acceleration, or visible progress. It is about testing. Not testing your ability, but testing your alignment. This is the moment before the transfer, when God checks not what you can do, but how you carry what you've already been given. Many people assume the test comes at the beginning, when faith is fragile and hope is new. In reality, the most decisive test often comes after endurance, after you've learned restraint, after you've stopped forcing outcomes, after you've proven you can wait. This is the test of consistency without adrenaline. In this season, life may feel almost ordinary. No dramatic obstacles, no urgent crises, just repetition, routine, silence. This is where impatience can quietly return, disguised as restlessness. You may feel an urge to do something just to feel movement again. But this urge is not always instruction. Sometimes it is residue old momentum looking for a task. The test before the transfer is whether you can remain faithful when nothing is demanding your strength. Pay attention to your reactions in small things. How you respond to inconvenience. How you treat people who can no longer help you. How you speak when no one is correcting you. These moments matter more than visible achievements. They reveal whether humility has settled into your character or is still situational. This is also the season where God watches how you handle what feels beneath you. Tasks that feel repetitive, conversations that feel slow, progress that feels incremental. Many miss the transfer not because they failed a big test, but because they despised a small one. They assumed readiness meant exemption from patience. But patience is not a waiting room, it is training. You are learning to carry authority without announcing it. There is another subtle test here: how you handle clarity without control. You may now see more clearly what God is doing, yet still have limited influence over the timing. This can create tension. Clarity without control requires trust at a deeper level. It asks you to stay aligned even when you understand enough to interfere but choose not to. This is maturity. The test before the transfer is not about perfection. It is about posture. Are you grounded, or are you still scanning for exits? Are you content, or merely tolerating the moment until something better arrives? God is not withholding the next phase to frustrate you. He is allowing this phase to finish its work. The ancient words recorded in the letter of James, chapter 1, verse 4, speak directly into this moment. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Notice the phrasing. Perseverance has a work, and that work must be finished. If it is interrupted too early, something remains underdeveloped. God is not interested in promoting you into a role that will later expose a weakness He intended to heal quietly here. You may notice that temptations shift in this season. They are no longer loud or destructive. They are subtle invitations to compromise rhythm, boundaries, or integrity just a little. These are not random. They are indicators that you are close to transition. Pressure changes form when the destination changes distance. Remain steady. Another sign you are in the test before transfer phase is decreased explanation from God. Earlier seasons came with reassurance, confirmation, and signs. Now there is more silence, not absence, but trust. God is no longer narrating every step because He is watching whether you have internalized what you were taught. Silence is often a sign of confidence, not neglect. In daily life, this season asks for simple faithfulness. Do what is in front of you. Speak with care. Rest without guilt. Keep your limits intact. Resist the urge to rehearse future outcomes. These small obediences accumulate quietly, like weight added to a scale you cannot yet see tipping. And when the transfer comes, and it will, it often arrives without announcement. One conversation shifts everything. One opportunity opens naturally. One season ends without drama. You will look back and realize the change had already begun long before you noticed it. This is why this phase matters. You are not being delayed. You are being completed. The test before the transfer is not meant to break you. It is meant to stabilize you so that what is coming does not shake you. You are being trusted with more, not because you asked for it, but because you are becoming someone who can carry it without losing yourself. Stay where you are. Stay faithful. Let perseverance finish. What comes next will not require striving, only readiness. This season is quietly strengthening your inner structure, like foundations set beneath the surface. The work being done now will support what rises later. You may not feel powerful, but you are becoming stable. Stability is what allows blessing to remain without becoming a burden. When the moment of transfer arrives, it will feel natural rather than overwhelming. You will recognize it not by noise, but by readiness. Until then, remain present, steady, and faithful. Nothing here is wasted. Everything is preparing you to receive what is coming without losing your peace. There is a moment when the journey stops feeling like survival and starts feeling like stewardship. You may not notice it immediately. Nothing dramatic announces it, but something inside you settles. You are no longer asking, "How do I get through this?" You are quietly asking, How do I carry this well? That question marks the transition into authority. Authority does not arrive with noise. It arrives with weight steady, grounded, unshakable. It is the kind of weight that does not rush, does not prove, does not defend itself. You carry it the way a crown is carried, not to impress, but because it belongs there. You did not earn this by effort alone. You were shaped into it through restraint, obedience, waiting, and the willingness to let God finish His work without interference. What once felt like loss now feels like alignment. What once felt like delay now reveals itself as protection. You are standing in a different place now. Look back not with regret, but with clarity. The moments you wanted to quit, the times you felt invisible, the seasons where obedience felt unrewarded, none of it was wasted. Every quiet no, every boundary held, every pause honored. These were threads. And now, you can finally see the pattern forming. You are not crowned because you endured pain. Many endure pain. You are crowned because you did not let pain turn you bitter, reckless, or hardened. You let it refine you. This is what heaven responds to. The Apostle Peter reminds us in his letter, chapter 5, verse 6, "Humble yourselves, therefore, in under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time." Notice the timing, due time, not rushed time, not pressured time. Due time is when lifting you will not crush you. Due time is when elevation no longer threatens your peace. You are closer to that moment than you realize, not because you are striving toward it, but because you have stopped resisting the process that prepares you for it. There is a quiet confidence forming in you now. You no longer feel the need to convince others of what God is doing. You don't need applause. You don't need agreement. You move differently. Speak less. Listen more. This is not withdrawal, it is discernment. You have become someone who can sit with unanswered questions without panic. Someone who can hold blessing without idolizing it. Someone who can lead without controlling. This is the fruit of surrender fully matured. As this chapter closes, imagine your life as a lamp placed in a window at night. You are not calling out to anyone. You are not chasing passers-by. You are simply lit. And those who are meant to see the light will see it. Some will pause, some will come closer, some will walk on. Your responsibility is not their response, it is to keep the flame tended. If these words have walked beside you even for a short stretch, you may feel a gentle nudge to acknowledge the moment, not loudly, not publicly, just quietly, like pressing your hand against your heart and saying, "Yes, this reached me." That quiet recognition is what a light becomes here. And if you know someone still standing at the edge of their own unanswered moment, you might choose to pass this light along, not to persuade them, only to whisper, "You're not alone." That is how a share becomes an act of care. If you sense that this voice, this pace, this kind of message is part of a longer walk you're on, you're welcome to remain connected, like choosing a familiar path you may return to when the road grows quiet again. That is the gentle beauty of subscribing. And finally, Sadet, if your heart wants to leave a trace, a word, a sentence, even a simple acknowledgement, you may choose to comment. Not to explain yourself, but as a marker in the journey that says, "I was here. This mattered." Nothing here is obligation, it is all invitation. And so we end where we truly begin, not with striving, not with fear, but with trust. You are not unfinished. You are not overlooked. You are not late. You are crowned not by effort, but by obedience. Not by force, but by faithfulness. Walk forward now, gently as is, steadily. What God has placed in you is secure, and what lies ahead will meet you at exactly the right moment. What remains now is integration. Let these words move from thought into rhythm, from inspiration into posture. You do not need to rush to apply everything at once. Truth settles best when it is lived slowly. Trust that what resonated will surface again exactly when you need it. Carry this closing gently into your days. Let it shape how you pause, how you listen, how you choose rest over reaction. The journey continues beyond these words, but you are not walking it unprepared. What has been planted here will grow quietly, faithfully, in time. As we come to the end of these words, nothing is being closed. There is no curtain falling, no final instruction being handed to you. This ending is a pause, not a conclusion, an open space where what you've heard can either stay with you quietly or move outward through you. If this message was useful, you may feel a natural desire to let it travel further than your own heart. Not as an obligation, not as a duty, just as someone passing along water after taking a needed drink. A quiet share can be enough. No explanation required. And if this message was not entirely for you, that is also perfectly okay. Not every word is meant to be carried forward. You are free to keep only what touched something real inside you, a sentence, an image, a feeling you couldn't quite name. Let the rest fall away without guilt. Wisdom is not in keeping everything, but in recognizing what belongs to you. Nothing here demands agreement. Nothing here asks you to change overnight. Growth rarely happens that way. What matters is what lingers when the noise fades. What returns to your mind later, unexpectedly. What feels steady instead of urgent. You are allowed to walk away with unanswered questions. You are allowed to take your time. God is not rushed, and neither is the work being done in you. Some seeds are meant to stay hidden before they rise. Some truths need silence before they find language. So take this ending with gentleness. Share if you feel led. Keep what resonates. Release what doesn't. There is no right response here, only an honest one. And wherever you go next, remember this. You are not behind. You are not overlooked, and you are not walking alone. The path continues, quietly unfolding, ready to meet you when you're ready to take the next step.